What's up guys, so with the introduction of Season 9's new team-ups and buffs, I feel like there's a lot of people that want to play Thor. So here's a quick guide on his abilities, how to use them, the best contexts to use Thor, and of course, how to make the most fun out of this character. Thor is easily the most versatile character in the game. He can be a brawler, a poke, he can be a bit of a dive as well. But most importantly, he can do insane damage and win pretty much every one-on-one. However, let's just get straight into it. So Thor's entire kit revolves around cycling his Awakening Rune state and managing his Thor Force to do so. Awakening Rune is his most damaging ability. It costs 3 Thor Force to do, but you need to be managing them because your other abilities, which are just as important, also use Thor Force. But just starting from the top, so first of all, Thor's normal attack is Mjolnir Bash. It is a melee attack, does a 4 meter radius, 0.6 second interval, and does 45 damage. Once you have activated his Awakening Rune state, that is a 5-second duration where your normal attacks turn in projectiles that does 70 damage, and you can launch 11 of them in the 5. Next you have Thor's second most important ability, which is Storm Surge. This is his dash attack. So at 0 charge you can move 10 meters yourself, or if you're carrying someone, so you hit someone in the path, you can move 6 meters and that does 40 damage. You can actually charge it all the way up, so where you move 20 meters alone, 13 meters if you're carrying someone, and it then becomes 60 damage. This costs 1 Thor Force and it has a 2-second interval. I don't say cooldown, it has an interval, because if you don't have any Thor Force, then you can't use it. Next is Thor's Hammer Throw. So this is a 24 meter radius where it throws and returns. On the throw, so when you first throw it, on impact it does 50 damage, and on the return, so if you miss them and it hits someone on return, that does 25. This does not cost any Thor Force, however it does regain a Thor Force on impact, and it has a 6-second cooldown. You then have Thor's Lightning Realm. This again has a 12-second cooldown, does not cost any Thor Force to use, but it does have a few unique abilities. Firstly, it does ground enemies upon entry and exit, as well as slow enemies up to 30%, again only upon entry and exit, and it also does 40 damage. However, its key strength in the fact that it regains Thor Force for the number of enemies caught in the field. So if you are at 0 and there are 3 enemies who are caught in the field, whether it's entry or exit, you will regain 3 Thor Force, allowing you to cycle your Awakening Rune state. And let's not forget about Thor's ultimate, God of Thunder. This is a really cool ability where you launch up into the sky. The radius below you does 40 damage per half second, and then you slam down to do an even bigger damage, which stuns enemies in the same radius. It is a little bit difficult to land because there's a lot of escape abilities that can get out of it, and a lot of people can just move faster than you do. But if you can land it correctly, it does a lot of damage, and you can take out 3 or 4 people with it. And last but not least, you do have Thor's Awakening Rune state. So this costs all 3 Thor Force. It does have a 2-second interval as well, so you cannot just go straight from one into the other unless that 2 seconds has passed. And this does 70 damage per attack. It is a 5-second duration, and you can launch up to 11 attacks in that 5-second duration. The most beautiful part of this is it also grants you 150 bonus health for using up each of the 3 Thor Force. That means you can engage, you can take on, and you can boost yourself in the parts where you're dying by just activating the ability alone. You do not have to land anything. Now Thor also gains extra unique abilities through survivability as part of each of his cooldowns. So with his Hammer Throw, upon impact it grants you 75 bonus health. With Storm Surge you can charge it up, but it still grants you up to 50 bonus health. And then like I said before, you can get up to 150 bonus health through activating his Awakened Rune state. This allows for more survivability, it keeps you engaged, keeps you in the fight, and again, paired with his team ups, you also get that extra survivability going along. Now, as I mentioned before, the most important part of Thor's kit is cycling the Thor Force and the Awakened Rune state. And how do you do that? So as I mentioned before, with Thor's Hammer Throw, you can regain a Thor Force upon impact when you land someone, but what also happens is if you miss that ability, Mjolnir will glow blue, and in the duration it glows blue, if you hit someone, you will regain a Thor Force. This also applies to Storm Surge. So again, regardless if you hit someone, after activating Storm Surge, Mjolnir will glow blue, and then you have the duration to hit someone to regain Thor Force. This is very important to cycle all of his abilities, including the Lightning Realm, so that you can keep regaining Thor Force, staying in the fight, activating Awakened Rune State, and maintaining that bonus health again to keep you engaged and keep you in the fight. It's really important that you stay in the fight with Thor. His team up allows it, which I'll touch on in just a moment, but most importantly, that's how you are going to cycle your Awakened Rune State. Now, with the new team up abilities, the main reason why you're here, with Hela's team up, as your health reaches 0, you will gain an extra bit of health. I believe it's 330, which is anti-heal, that allows you time to get a KO. You do not have to get the final hit, but if you are involved in a KO, which is when you're involved in an elimination, but you don't have to be responsible for the final hit, you'll revive with a little bit of bonus health. And when Hela is on the team, if she is also engaged in a KO, so again, doesn't have to be responsible for the final hit, doesn't have to be a KO that you're also involved in as Thor, you will be revived with a little bit of bonus health. This simply keeps you engaged in the fight, but allows you to chase down those targets when you're at low health, because you know if you get the pick, you can stay in the fight. It's really important that you stay in the fight during this moment, because you are anti-healed. You cannot receive any healing, but you can get a little bit of bonus health through activating your abilities. Too many times I've seen people run off when they've health reached 0. There is no point. The best bet you can do is at least go for a trade-off so you can get a pick and die at the same time, or worst case scenario, you die anyway. So it doesn't make a difference. You would stay in the fight, try and get a pick, and if you do get a pick, you can find your way back out, get health, turn the fight from a 6v6 to a 5v6, and then you can take it from there. Next is Angela's team up, which in my opinion is just as strong as the Hela's. What it does is it allows you to throw a spear that regains Thor Force for the number of people it hit. A few things about the spear, it does attach to enemies, but then if you land it, you can then follow up with a leap onto the spear, which does extra damage to the people, and if Angela is on the field at the same time, you will regain, you'll get bonus health as you do that. This one's also really cool for just cycling Awaken the Rune State. I would say the Hela team up is for when you're really into jumping into the back line and diving the 1v1s, and knowing that you're going to take a lot of damage and get your health really low so you can stay in the fight. The Angela team up is more about cycling your Awaken the Rune State. So if you prefer to do that, go for the Angela one. It helps out massively, or if you don't, if you just prefer to staying in the fight for longer, then you go for the Hela. So how to use Thor properly. Thor is an off tank, which means he's not going to be the person just absorbing damage like say someone like Doctor Strange or Magneto will with their shields and bubbles. Thor is going to be taking off angles, and he's going to be monitoring off angles as well. One thing that people need to remember with Thor is that he is the peeler. He has the maneuverability, the abilities like the dash and the Thor Force or the Angela leap to go and help with your backline, but also to engage the other enemies that are taking off the off angles, like your Cyclops or your Moon Knights or your ranged attackers. You don't necessarily have to be diving the backline with Thor, but his abilities also allow him to do that. The one thing that you want to focus on is essentially taking 1v1s. You're going to use your Storm Surge to either move your tanks out of the way, the enemy tanks out of the way. You can pick tunnels or certain channels to go into. If there isn't, what I like to do as well is actually just move the tanks closer to my team, especially someone like a Magneto where they have less maneuverability, and then you can just turn that fight from a 6v6 into a very quick 1v6. You can also use it to engage the off angle. So if you see a DPS who's taken an off angle that's relatively easy to get to, or not at the back of the field, like say someone like a Hela or a Phoenix, where they can just sit behind their healers, you can take the off angle and engage them and force them off. Now Thor does have the ability to take them out, to give them elimination, but you don't necessarily have to do that to engage with Thor. You can force them off their position, take another off angle yourself, and then go ahead and engage the backline. And because of Thor's survivability, especially with the Hela team up and the bonus health, you can draw a lot of resources facing your way or force a lot of resources out of the enemy healers. Thor is also a very contextual hero. He doesn't always need to be in the backline, he doesn't always need to be engaging in the thing. And because he's so versatile, depending on who you're going against will determine on when you go and do what you do. I feel like when there's a Venom on a team, you don't necessarily want to be taking as many off angles because you know he can dive quite quickly. However, with the ability of Storm Sash, you can also stop him from escaping or just apply a lot of damage to the point where he can't escape fast enough. This is really useful because as Thor, to be able to run to your backline and even move Thor or move Venom out of the way where he can't use his grab, then very simply you are nullifying or reducing Venom's effectiveness just by existing there. And by able to peel to your backline with Thor, with someone like a Venom or even a Hulk who can just quickly damage them, you change the fight from a 6v6 to a 5v6 all over again. However, if there's no one diving the backline and you have a frontline opponent like Doctor Strange and Magneto, well then you want to focus on engaging the tanks by applying pressure or just disturbing their gameplay. Someone like Magneto doesn't have many maneuver abilities or any maneuver abilities. He has a lot of survivability with his bubbles and his shield. However, that doesn't help against Thor's melee. So if there is a Magneto on a team, don't be afraid to stay on the front line and just disrupt that Magneto's gameplay. You are still going to be trying to find ways to isolate him, either by using your Storm Surge to push them into a corner, to push them into the rest of your team, or to find a little off angle where you can very quickly get a 1v1 or just even move past them. A lot of the time, because of the amount of damage that Thor can do, you can very simply walk past the enemy tanks and start engaging the backline, and they will be forced to turn around and chase you, allowing your team to push up and apply even more pressure. Now, Thor has quite a few combos that you can mix in to add quite a bit of style, but there is one main combo that you need to know, which is Mjolnir Bash, Hammer Throw, Mjolnir Bash, Awaken the Rune State, and then a couple attacks, and that's it. It's going to melt pretty much everyone you fight. All DPS are going to be melted pretty much, and it's really going to apply a lot of pressure to tanks. The one thing that you've got to remember is as soon as you make impact with a Mjolnir Bash, you can throw the hammer and it will return. If Mjolnir hits someone on the throw, it returns to you pretty much instantly. So if they're right in front of you, they're just going to start making it way back, and then you can straight away just go into your next move, being the Awaken State. He does have a lot of combos that involve that, but a lot of them are style. The main one is just that bread and butter combo of Bash, Hammer Throw, Bash, Awaken State, Attack, Attack. Now, how to make the most of Thor. As I mentioned before, Thor is a very versatile attack, and I touched on this a little bit earlier before, but there's two styles, or there's two moments where you want to play him, right? You've got your offensive and you've got your defensive. Now, starting off with the offensive, as I mentioned, Thor is a off tank. So you want to be taking the off tank angles, but you still want to be on the front line. You are still a tank at the end of the day. You don't need to be making your long way round to be diving the back line. While there's moments that apply for that, that is not the main focus. What you want to be doing is keeping an eye out for your enemy divers, seeing what off angles they're taking, and then also keeping an eye out for when you have the ability to maneuver one of their tanks. This especially applies for a Doctor Strange or a Magneto, who are going to be maintaining a frontline posture. However, as Thor, if you have an angle where you can push them into a room, take them around a corner, or even take them behind your other tank, it simply allows you to isolate them from their heals, isolate them from their support, and most importantly, allow your team to apply pressure to the tank, again turning it into a 5v6. Now, on the defensive style, you are still going to be taking off angles. You're going to be keeping an eye out of the other team's DPS, making sure they're not taking too many off angles, and if they are, you can use your Storm Surge to very quickly engage and pressure them. The best thing to understand with Thor is while you have the ability to get the Elam, you do not need to. Simply being there and applying pressure wins you that fight per se, because they have to reset, or they have to take another off angle, or they have to move back where they're no longer applying pressure to your backline or can't engage in the fight. On top of that, you do also have the ability to peel backwards. So if they have a diver tank who's made it back, very simply just move into their direction, move the diver out of the way of the fight, and then again they are isolated with a 1v1 with Thor, who once you regain and know how to manage his Thor force, can very simply become a massive cannon. Not a glass cannon, a just massive cannon. You have 600 HP with bonus health that can just do an insane amount of damage. And I especially like it when you're going against, say, someone like a Magic or a Daredevil, even things like Flyers and Venoms. I really like fighting Venoms when they're in the backline, because you can just nullify their gameplay altogether. Once they dive in, I move them out their way, their grab doesn't work, they have to find another way, and they end up leaving the fight. And with the Hela playstyle, if you're gauging the front line and you want to put even more pressure on, you can definitely do that. Just keep walking forward and keep activating your abilities. And if you dare the back line, you can isolate your target, get that 1v1, regain your health, and then come back. With the Angela one, you can use it both offensively and defensively, in the sense where if someone's diving your backline and you haven't got the Storm Surge, pop your Angela ability, aim it in that area, slam towards them, you've got your Thor force back. Again, you can isolate for a 1v1 by using your Storm Surge again, or you can do the same. If one of your teammates dive in their backline and they need a little bit of help, Angela dive into the backline, you get your Thor force again, you can move in isolation, 1v1, or you can even use it to interrupt, engage, and then escape as well. Once again, Thor is extremely versatile. He can be a little bit of a poke, he can be a bit of a dive, he can be a bit of a brawler. It's important that you pay attention to who you're going against and what your enemy team is doing. But like I said, Thor can fit into every role. He has the ability to interrupt and peel defensively. He has the ability to just annoy enemy teammates. And some of my favorite matchups against him are definitely Doctor Strange and Magneto. Especially with a Doctor Strange, what I like to do is actually engage with my lightning realm, because Doctor Strange always jumps out, but that simply forces him to fall back down again. Then I can move him again with my Storm Surge. The same thing applies for Magneto. Once I can move a Magneto into my team, it's very unlikely that he's going to be able to escape. Yes, he can pop his bubble, but by the time the bubble's popped, I can just move him again. And the same thing applies for people like Invis or even a Moon Knight, where once they use their ability, they're not escaping. Thor is just way too strong. Especially with Invis as well. Again, I like to engage with my lightning realm because all Invises like to do is jump out, and once they've jumped out of my realm, they slow down, they also lose their invisibility, and I regain Thor force for when they were in there in the first place. Thor is overall really cool. He's very contextual. It takes like a lot of getting used to manage his Thor force, but he's also extremely fun and you can play him in such different ways. But yeah, I hope that's helped everyone. I mean, I tried to give a basic understanding of it. I can go into more details with like more examples in other ones. I can make a follow-up video for that. But if you enjoyed the video, drop a like, subscribe, and I'll catch you for the next one. Safe.